This building right here was just a shed out in the pasture, long forgotten. It was our old farm stand, but now it is a nice little sauna. We're going to show you the build today in this video.
And how we did it on a budget.
We're going to start out this video by cutting in all of the build to get us to this point. So use the time codes included if you want to skip around. And at the end of the video, we're going to tell you all about some of our thoughts on why we even wanted a sauna, some of the benefits that it has. So click forward if you want to see just that part. Here we go. It's day one of converting our old farm stand into a sauna. In we go. This is what we're working with starting out. So it is down to a shell, pretty much. We have to get rid of some old things that linger from the farm stands. A few little tiny signs, some solar thing that we used to have in here. Then we're going to start with the walls, probably is going to be our first step. We're going to get insulation. We have some old foam insulation we're going to throw in here, and then we have some other insulation that we purchased that we're going to throw in here if we don't have enough foam insulation. But we do really want to get rid of this big pile of leftover insulation from an RV that it used to skirt. We will obviously kind of deal with issues like that, but there's a lot of good pieces in here that would be perfect for our new little sauna. Hi, Teddy. This is the pile of tongue and groove white cedar that our friend Dane with B&D Homes gave to us, which was really nice of him. And this is going to be going into the sauna. You can see there's a lot of really nice boards right here. He actually had a friend mill it for him and sent it with us. And we drove it all the way from Minnesota over to Montana, strapped on top of our vehicle. And now we get to finally use it. And here's a look at some of the log homes that he builds out in Minnesota. And now that we have some materials on hand, it's time to get going with the new sauna. And first thing to do was remove all of the old memorabilia from the farm stand. And then it's time to get this plastic taken up off of the floor. And we started to get insulation in. This is it as it was going in. We didn't really catch all of it on time lapse, but pretty much we just filled in any pockets with the insulation that I already showed you. A little bit different than yesterday. It's a little cold out today. It's looking pretty good at this point. However, there were a few little pockets that I needed to fill in, so I went ahead and got those done before our next steps. All of the insulation is in. It is day 2. We have a space heater going, and this is what she's looking like right now. Do have some insulation that is drying that I'll have to cut off pretty soon, but it's time to get some plastic up. Just filled up all the crevices. We did make sure to also trim this out too, right here, so that when the panels sit on here, the cedar panels, they can go straight across like that, and then this way as well. So they're gonna butt up right there. The corners were kind of a little bit of a pain on these 2 end walls, but so far we're pretty excited about it. Should be nice for what it is and the materials that we're putting into it so far. Once insulation was done, and once we cut out some of that spray foam insulation that was bulging out, now it is time to go ahead and get some plastic up to make a vapor barrier so we can get ready for the cedar, which will be going in next. The plastic is all on. This is where we're at. And I have been in here for a long time. It is nice and warm in here. I haven't been using the heater for a little while now, which means all this insulation is doing its job. Now John is starting in on installing our tongue and groove cedar boards that I showed you earlier. And you see that gap at the bottom? We opted to leave that open and to start, I think, 3 or 4 inches up because we're going to end up trimming that out. And we still need to address the floor. You can see the floor is made out of OSB, and since this is going to be a sauna, it's going to be a very damp and humid environment, and we needed a good solution. So we deliberated about that for a while, but we'll show you what we came up with later on in the video. Day 3 of working on the sauna, and we will show you what it looks like. John's been working on the tongue and groove in here, and it is cedar. It smells really pretty in here, really nice. So this is where we're at. It looks really nice. I'm really surprised that this right here, where it turns up the wall, Ended up being really seamless. You can maybe see better at that angle.
Here we go again. John plugged away at this and just kind of got the job done. Kind of a fun project when you're doing paneling because you can see it all come together. Right here at the top, we decided to leave a gap because we're going to end up trimming that out. So here we are on the other side. Didn't quite get the bottom portion filmed, but that's okay because you already saw it on the first side. And at this point, it was about time to start the end walls. As you can see, we ran out of the tongue and groove cedar and we ended up going with Western red cedar that were originally untreated fence boards, and they were actually pretty affordable. We gave them a light sanding and used them as paneling. At this point in the project, it was time to start thinking about the wood stove. Tiny Wood Stove was kind enough to send us this wood stove to try out. And this was us talking about where the stove would fit and how we were going to meet the clearances with the heat shield. The employees at Tiny Wood Stove were very helpful, and they really communicated with us about how to make a wood stove work in this very small space. We had a little issue with the pitch of the roof being so steep, and they educated us on some great solutions to make it work and make it function and make it safe. With the stove now ordered, John continued to work on the cedar here and there. He also does the trim. I don't think we quite have that film, but I will tell you this room is starting to smell really, really nice every time I go into it. And next we are actually going to start on the floor. What we ended up doing for the floor was purchasing a Firestone Rubber Guard 45 mil piece of rubber roofing, and the plan was to essentially form somewhat of a shower pan so that any standing water could be brushed outside and water would not come in contact with that OSB flooring that is underneath. We are onto this little piece right here. This one I messed up and accidentally cut it a little too big. This one's pretty good. The rest of it looks pretty darn nice. I have these extra little strips that I'm going to use to make something right here that goes up the wall that is glued a lot with a lot of liquid nails, and then probably caulk this in the end so that water can't ever get through. Right here is the goal, and it's just going to be something we have to pay attention to and not leave soaking wet. All right, time to make those little pieces now. And this is what I ended up doing in the corners to make it a little bit more watertight, and we're really hoping that this flooring ends up being a good solution. It was pretty affordable for a 7.5 foot by 10 foot piece, being about $100. And here we go on the rest of the floor. I'm going to trim the vapor barrier, and now that it has all been dry fit, it is going to be time to glue everything down. After fighting with the caulking gun for a minute there, I do start gluing it down, and it went in pretty nice. And when I finished the floor, I felt like it looked pretty good. I used a couple random weights that were laying around to push those corners up and make sure the glue would really adhere very nicely. And this is what we ended up with at the end. We cranked that space heater up and let it sit for a day or so that everything could cure. At this point, the Tiny Wood Stove arrived. We cut a hole in the ceiling there, and this was unpackaging the Tiny Wood Stove, which was really, really easy to put together. John said you bolt a couple legs on, you put the damper and the ashtray in. It was very simple and a quick job to get it all assembled, but at the same time looks like a pretty sturdy little stove. And what we decided to do next was light a fire in the stove to burn off any paints or chemicals that were on the stove, as we have installed new stoves in the past and sometimes they can really smell up your area, and we didn't want that going into the sauna. So we burned a fire outside and just let it kind of do its thing. Now it is time to place the sauna at its future location, and we decided to do this right now because we didn't want to set the wood stove up and then jar things around, as we were going to move the sauna pretty soon. So you can see we just pulled it up onto some skids and drug it right down to where it is going to go, next to our creek or our water source. And this went pretty smoothly. There were a few bumps along the way, but nothing too bad, and we get it in its spot. They are going to jack it up a little bit and put some blocks under the edges, and then it's time to get our wood stove installed.
Putting caulking on our silicone boot. High temp silicone boot.
That's through the roof.
Yep, through the roof.
Let's look inside. See where we're at so far. It's looking pretty good. Kind of messy. Pretty. Not completely done yet, but getting really close. After using the sauna a few times initially, we really determined we wanted a platform out in front of the sauna in order to keep it a little bit cleaner inside. So we used some weed mat that we had from a previous garden and overlapped those burned holes, moved this big hay bale around, and then now we are going to be able to get a nice deck platform right in front of there that will help keep our feet clean and help keep dirt and debris out of the sauna when we are coming from the house or when we have wet feet from coming back from the creek.
We're gonna sit in there. My goggles are about to be the sweat ball.
Are they? How you doing?
Good.
I am dripping pretty good. This one, on the other hand, she's a holdout, making us all cook in here.
Whoa, Dad, can you do that again?
Oh, and it's foggy. You want to get out?
Yep,
How is it in here?
it's nice. The way it's supposed to be.
Look at that big pile of sweat under you.
Yep.
And water. You've jumped in once, right?
Yep. So I sit in for 15 minutes, and then I get in the swimming hole, and then this time I get out and I sit in. I force myself to sit in for about 20 minutes, close to as 20 minutes as I can.
We want to share a little bit about why we even wanted a sauna in the first place. Now that you've seen the whole build to this point. So why did we want a sauna?
We grew up with a sauna at our family cabin, and they're very enjoyable and just feel really good to take one.
And also there are so many health benefits with taking a sauna daily that it just really seemed like something we wanted to start incorporating into our lifestyle, not just when we're at the lake place.
And it's especially nice here in the winter when it gets dark at 5 o'clock at night and we have nothing else to do, kind of in the off season when we're looking for something to do in the winter. It's nice to fire up a sauna at night and go out in the dark, and being able to take a nice hot sauna and jump in the creek and rinse off sure beats taking a shower inside,
In your opinion?
in my opinion.
So what are some of the health benefits? Because you looked into that a little bit whenever we were thinking about this video and thinking about putting this into our lifestyle a little bit more.
They lower blood pressure and reduce heart disease risk, and they also have shown to decrease overall mortality in long-term studies done in Scandinavian countries. And so take it for what you will. I don't really do it for that, but I just enjoy taking a sauna, and it's kind of nice to hear that there's other possible benefits to it.
On our channel, we share a lot about growing a lot of produce, all things farming, some like homesteading type of things. And we have a really big off season at our property because we're in Montana and it gets pretty cold. This year we've experienced a little less of an off season because we've been preparing so much for our future growing season. But having a sauna, like he just mentioned, is something that is so nice to just know that you have that option in the evening when it's dark at like 4:30, and we can have something else to do besides, you know, just watching TV or something like that. So that's another reason that we wanted a sauna.
Yep. And we moved to this place 2 years ago and took our farm stand with us because we have no public access road but in front of our house anymore. And it just kind of was a natural thing to do because we also have it's a creek, and it's a creek that's coming off the mountains. They straightened it out and they drain tiled a lot of the farm fields around us because we have high water levels, so they can get in there and farm without sinking equipment in the ground or whatever. So the creek doesn't really look like a creek, it looks more like a drainage ditch, but it's just a mountain creek with groundwater. And then also in the summer, there's excess irrigation water gets poured in there. So it's pretty nice, pretty clean, stays open all year round, and consistent temperatures.
So the fact that we have access to water
right nearby was another reason we wanted a sauna.
If you enjoy taking a sauna and you don't have a water feature at your house, my brother also has put a sauna in his house, and he just uses a stock tank to jump in, because I really think that the contrast makes taking a sauna so much more enjoyable than just getting hot. I like actually having that relief to cool off afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's an idea for you, even if you don't have a creek or lake or whatever, even snow at your house, to jump in.
And it's not totally necessary. It's just kind of a nice additional.
I prefer it.
I know you do. So we're going to talk a little bit about the build. Inside of this sauna, we did have the privilege to put a 4K Dwarf stove from Tiny Wood Stoves in there. And the reason that we really want to focus on the wood stove is because what is a sauna without a lot of heat? That is like the main thing, is you need it to be hot. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why we decided to go with a wood stove versus other ways of heating this sauna.
And probably one of the main ones is we already heat our house with wood, and it's cheap to dang near free for us to get. And also, when we heat with wood, we're eliminating the need to run wiring or anything like that. It's completely off grid. We can drag this thing wherever we want, put it wherever we want, and heat it as much as we want or as little as we want, and not have to worry about any bills or anything like that. So.
And the feel of a wood stove heating a space is different than other forms of heat.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's another reason why we wanted to go with it. Plus, it's a lot more traditional to have a wood stove inside of a sauna. So after completing this build and having a little bit of time using the sauna, we have a few big suggestions. If you're looking to building your own backyard sauna, we just wanted to pass along to you. So our first suggestion is to make sure you really think about the floor.
So we didn't want to have to go back and replace anything in the next 5 years really with this. So trying to make it a more long-term build was in mind. Having an exposed wood floor to non-treated wood floor to that much water and moisture day in and day out would be a bad idea, and it would rot away rather quickly.
Yep, so you saw how we did it in the video with how we kind of put the rubber mat up onto the walls. We're hoping that's going to be a good solution long term. Time will tell.
It seems to be working well so far. The next thing that we would highly recommend doing is using cedar as much as possible throughout the interior of the build, especially on areas like the benches and where the benches touch the floor. Those should be cedar and not anything treated, because you don't want off-gassing chemicals, and you don't want to stain anything and have the stain off-gassing in your sauna either. Natural is way better, and cedar's naturally rot resistant.
And the smell of it is so good.
Yeah, it smells like a sauna.
And another thing that we would definitely recommend not skimping on is the insulation. When it gets really cold here, making this building hot is definitely doable, but if we didn't have that insulation, it would not be. So insulate, insulate, insulate. That is a recommendation.
Just as important as your heat source is your insulation.
And the fourth suggestion, after thinking about this build and reflecting on it a little bit, is just making sure you really think about your heat source, making sure it's the appropriate size for your space and for your environment, and just getting a good heat source.
To show you around the sauna build, Joe Ray put these nice hooks up, or just screws up for holding up a squeegee, because I squeegee the rubber floor out after I get done every time, and you'll get like a couple gallons of water come out of that, which is surprising, the amount of moisture that sits in there. Broom just for cleaning up ashes and stuff, a couple hooks for towels or swimsuits. The building siding is in rough shape, and we plan on fixing that sometime this summer or whenever we get to it, sometime soon. Put a better siding on. Here's the exterior of our flue from Tiny Wood Stoves with the stainless double wall. And since it gets so windy here and this is such a tall stack, we decided to rig up an extra brace, and we just used rebar and bent it to the appropriate angles, put some roofing screws in to hold the rebar onto the roof, and then hose clamped the rebar onto the pipe. And that seems to be working really well, because we got 90-mile-an-hour winds here a month ago. And the only other really additional thing we did was put a shelf outside the window. Take the screen out if you're going to use this, but just to put drinks on to keep them cold while you're in there. Put your water or your beer on there while you're in there sweating. And we built this nice big platform to take your clothes off on, or kick your shoes off, and make sure you're not tracking stuff inside the sauna. And I'm very happy we did that. We put weed mat down underneath the platform, so hopefully we don't have weeds growing up underneath it that we're getting annoyed by all summer. So after you get nice and hot, usually takes about 20 minutes. I built this stairway down into our ditch, or a creek, whichever you want to call it. We'll take you inside and show you the interior of the build. This is all tongue and groove cedar, eastern white cedar that my good buddy Dane from B&D Homes gave us for free. And we knew we were going to build a sauna, and we were hoping this was going to be enough tongue and groove to do it all, but it wasn't. We ran out. And so then we went to Lowe's to get these cedar fence panels, and they're pretty cheap, pretty affordable. They're 5-foot pieces, and I believe they're like $3 a piece or something like that at the time we built this. And we made the trim out of them and the benches. All the cedar fence panels that we bought from Lowe's to finish off like the back wall and the front wall, we had just put a quick rough sand just to make them a little nicer. And then I just bought some rough sawn cedar boards for the legs of the benches. I made one high bench that gets most of the use, and then one lower bench for kids or extra seating for if anybody else comes in. We could probably fit solid 6-7 people in here easily. We have a towel rack here and a sauna thermometer that works really well, and we've been just lighting the place with the candles, but honestly most of the light comes from our really nice stove that we put in here, which is kind of the idea of when we went to get the stove. We thought we need one with a glass front that puts out a lot of light because it's beautiful and creates a much nicer space for a sauna. Talk to you about the stove. We wanted to get a wood stove with a glass front because we knew we'd put out a lot of light. You can also check your fire easy with that, because if you don't get the glass front, you're kind of guessing on what the fire is doing in there. When we were deciding on a stove, I kicked around the idea of getting like a tent stove, which I own for taking back in the mountains hunting and stuff, but I knew that those things do not burn that great and don't have like the nice controls that a stove like this has, and they're not as efficient. They don't throw as much heat. Very happy with it. It is super efficient, throws a ton of heat, and it's makes getting a sauna going really easy and not a chore. So if you're interested more in this Dwarf 4 kilowatt tiny stove, there'll be a link in the description and you can click on it to get more information on it. Also, we're going to do another review video for the stove if you're interested in how it performs in a sauna. Tiny Wood Stoves seems to primarily focus on making these for things like Airstreams or tiny homes. This is one of their first times, it sounds like, getting good feedback from someone using it in a sauna. So it's a little different for what they're typically using and designing these for, but it has been working flawlessly, performing great, and we're very happy with it so far. So keep your eye out for that video if you're interested in it. We have a steamer here because putting rocks and throwing water on this would rust your stove. I think it would have pretty much any stove you have, and so we just opt to do a steamer, and it gets super steamy in here, like the windows get beaded up and everything, which creates a higher humidity environment, which makes you sweat quicker and more easily. And also on the single wall stovepipe, I have a thermometer to show what is going up the flue. Kind of tells me when I need to shut the stove air controls down to try to retain more heat in the firebox and get a more efficient burn. And outside of the stove, we have our heat shield because it is very close to the walls, and tiny stoves will walk you through how to build a heat shield. It's very simple. It's just metal spacers to create a cool airflow behind there, and that seems to be working great. Putting this heat shield on is how we go from a clearance requirement of 18 inches down to 6 inches, seeing as how close it is to the wall and nothing's getting burned up or too hot. And it's been working really well so far.
And that is it for this video. We hope you found something useful with our sauna build. It was a fun thing to do, a nice little winter project. You did the majority of the work though, for sure. But it was definitely a nice addition to our farm that we will get to use for many years to come.
Hopefully we inspire you to get sweaty.
Thanks for watching.